his upbringing, his life, writing songs, memories of writing certain songs or recording certain songs.
Right.
How he came up through the ranks from, being a small town Indiana boy to moving to England to Pat Benatar covering I Need a Lover, things like that.
Okay.
Very, very good interview. Lots of wheezing, though. Holy shit, those cigarettes have taken a toll on his voice. I mean, how the microphone is up close, but lots of
it's gonna be a great tour.
lots
of big hits and a few surprises along the way.
Lots of emphysema sounding going on there.
Maybe that's why he's doing it. Last chance.
Yeah, last chance to get up. But so anyway, I was pleasantly surprised with the interview that he did with Joe Rogan.
Okay.
Now, he kind of pulled the curtain back on a couple of things in the music business, and interestingly enough, you brought it up in the first segment when we were talking about Megadeth, about being over as far as like rock music is concerned, and maybe rap music could sell albums, but rock music certainly isn't selling albums, and so on and so forth. Right. Well, interestingly enough, he brought that up. That rock music is not album centric to where it sells, and the reason it's not is that the record labels made it that way.
Yeah.
So he explains how that came to be and why, and it's all money driven, and it all has to do with SoundScan.
Okay. So
I sent you the link. I want to thank Brian from Tennessee for shooting this over. But it was an interesting comment on his part about why rock albums don't sell these days.
Okay. Well, let's put it on the screen here. Just play it from the beginning, or?
Yeah, just play it from the beginning. I think this is just the part where he talks about that subject specifically.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
So John Mellencamp went on the Joe Rogan Experience, and he gave an interesting take on why we've seen fewer and fewer successful rock bands in recent years. And his explanation might even sound a tad bit conspiratorial to those of that mindset. Check it out.
I learned stuff from some of the critics that were good.
Like what?
Well, one of my best friends was a guy named Tim White, who was the editor of Rolling Stone and the editor of Billboard magazine, and he died a few years ago. And you want to hear some inside baseball?
Sure.
Tim and I talked every day. And Tim is as different as me, as you. Tim wore a bow tie, white bucks, blue jeans, suit jacket every day. And he was the editor of Rolling Stone for a long time. And then he became editor of Billboard, and he called me up and he said, I'm going to have to sign a deal with SoundScan. I said, so? I didn't know what that was. He goes, John, you don't understand the ramifications of signing a deal with SoundScan. I said, well, what are they? He goes, you'll be out of business. I go, why do you say that? He goes, because now, the way the Billboard charts work, is this getting too inside baseball?
No, not at all. No.
The way that the charts work is that if you get played in Indianapolis and you get played in New York, it counts as one play. New York counts as one play. Indianapolis counts as one play. A play's a play. When SoundScan came in, they changed it so it's like the number one record of the week. So if you got to play in New York, that was worth 5 points. If you got to play in Indianapolis, that was worth a half a point.
Oh.
So what does that mean? That means that people who grew up in St. Louis and where rock took place, all of a sudden, where I got played all the time, the points didn't amount to shit.
Mm.
But what did? Urban stations. Urban stations played what? rap. So, do you remember when all of a sudden rap music took over?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because these guys were so great, and I'm not saying they were bad. I'm just saying that it was because of SoundScan, and my friend Tim knew this was going to happen. As soon as I signed this deal with SoundScan, and there was a magazine called Radio and Records at the time who was rivaling Billboard, and if Tim hadn't have bought SoundScan, Radio and Records would have bought them, which would have made them the premier record company because they were the most modern. And so SoundScan changed everything. So I'm sure that you remember that there was a time when you knew every song that was number one. Then all of a sudden you woke up one day and you didn't know how does this song become number one? But the way that it was before SoundScan, each song had to work its way up the charts. So if you had let's say 20 plays, I'm just throwing out low numbers, but if you had 20 plays, that got added to the 20 plays that you got the next week. So now you have 40 plays. So you might move up from 36 to 31. But Joe Rogan in Boston was hearing the fucking songs as they move up. Oh, I heard this new song. You talk to your friend. And they said, yeah, I heard that song. And then all of a sudden the song would build and build and build and build and build and build. And Michael Jackson would be number one or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
And once SoundScan took over, if you were in a rock band, the record companies said, well, fuck this. We're not even going to advertise in Indianapolis anymore.
All right, I got to question this. Because isn't this the same thing that was happening just in flipped over order back in the day? Weren't the rock bands the ones that were getting it, and the R&B and rap and that stuff weren't getting the place, so they weren't getting...
Yeah,
they were not getting the same push, and now they are?
Yeah, well, no, because of the way that they calculate the popularity of music. Okay. Because like the urban areas, like New York City, say the urban areas,
mm-hmm.
they're not going to be gravitating toward rock bands. They're going to be gravitating to the urban rap thing. And those plays count more on SoundScan than rock bands count, for that. So they're pushing the music that charts high on SoundScan and leaving the rock bands in the dust.
I don't know. The only reason that sounds fishy to me is because why wouldn't SoundScan, why wouldn't they want all sorts of music to do well?
Well, it's advertising.
But I mean, you could certainly, if you had rock bands that were on a chart and growing, you would have more radio stations playing it, which would mean more advertising dollars, which would mean more plays, which would mean more money in a demo that they're not hitting now. The John Cougar Mellencamp fan demo is not the same as the 2 Chainz demo.
Right, of course.
So if you had them both doing well, wouldn't you make double the money?
No, because you're using the same platform to track both. And so you're maximizing your bang for the buck by putting your money and your advertising behind something that's going to chart high in large urban areas, as opposed to the little farm towns that might listen to John Mellencamp.
Yeah, I guess.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. It just seems like if I owned it, I would want them all to do well, because then I'm making 5 times as much money. Because I would have money coming in from rock stations and from R&B stations and jazz stations and what you would think you would get more.
You got to remember that even in Chicago, the biggest rock station in Chicago, which was the Loop, closed, done, gone.
No, I understand that it's because of shit like this.
Exactly.
But if they were paying, if they were doing both, and maybe it's a staffing thing. Maybe they can't staff to do both or something.
Right.
But I would think that if they were doing both, the Loop would still be very much in business. If rock was still powerful, even if it was number 2 to rap, but it was still powerful, you would still have the Loop. You would still have WMMS playing music instead of the Alan Cox Show or shit like that.
There you go. Even MMS, the most notorious rock station in the nation, which actually broke John Mellencamp.
Right.
MMS was responsible for launching John Mellencamp into in the public conscious. Same way with Rush. MMS was responsible for Rush. You know, they were the premier rock station of the 70s and the 80s.
Sure.
You know, but isn't the case anymore, and that's why rap dominates.
Yeah.
You know, so huge. So it's a big money maker for, these advertisers who's willing to throw their money behind it in a more concentrated urban area, such as the New York cities and the Chicagos and the Philadelphias and LAs and stuff.
It just sucks.